In the quiet town of Edgewood, nestled between ancient woods harboring sinister secrets and forgotten graves with lingering spirits, a malevolent force stirred. As the anniversary of Malcolm Stockton's execution approached. Decades ago, the townsfolk had banded together to capture and execute the notorious sadistic serial killer, Malcolm Stockton, bringing his reign of terror to an end. His gruesome crimes had left the community scarred with memories that refused to fade. He vowed on his deathbed to return with vengeance, consumed with exacting pain and punishment on the descendants of those who had captured him. The townspeople went about their daily lives, their laughter and chatter masking the subtle shift in the atmosphere as night crept in. Streets became quiet and still as an unsettling air settled over Edgewood. Unbeknownst to them, a dark ritual conducted by a cabal of cultists seeking revenge and pull Malcolm's twisted soul back from the abyss, hidden in the shadow of forgotten graveyard, their faces obscured by hooded cloaks, their dark chants a counterpoint to the fading daylight. An insidious tension settled like a thick fog, clinging to every cobblestone and twisting around the gnarled branches of ancient trees. Nightfall arrived like a shroud, draping over Edgewood with an unsettling weight. A sense of impending doom hung in the air, causing residents to instinctively lock themselves indoors. The once bustling streets now stood deserted, bathed in the sickly glow of flickering lamplights that did little to dispel the encroaching doom. In a hidden chamber beneath the town, the cultists enacted a ritual that reached across the veil between the living and the dead. Candles flickered, casting dancing shadows on the damp walls adorned with cryptic symbols. The air became charged with an otherworldly energy as the cultists chanted ancient incantations, invoking the twisted soul of Malcolm Stockton from the abyss. Stockton's return was not a mere spectral presence, it was a malevolent force, a vengeful poltergeist reborn with an insatiable hunger for retribution. His twisted soul pulsed with an ethereal glow as he materialized, his eyes gleaming with malice. The cultists, consumed by their thirst for revenge, had succeeded in pulling the murderer back from the depths of the afterlife. As the ritual reached its crescendo, the atmosphere in Edgewood shifted in tandem. The ominous stillness deepened, as if the town itself held its breath in anticipation of the malevolent force now unleashed upon it. The cabal's dark machinations resonated with the very heartbeat of the town, echoing through the narrow alleys and quiet squares. The unsuspecting residents, behind closed doors, felt an unexplained chill in the air, a shiver that crawled down their spines. Little did they know that the night held more than just the absence of sunlight. It cradled a malevolence that slinked through the quiet streets, seeking out the descendants of those who had played a role in Stockton's capture. The town of Edgewood, once a haven of tranquility, now stood on the precipice of a nightmare, unaware of the impending torment that would descend upon its unsuspecting inhabitants. The cultists' dark ritual had set in motion a chain of events that would plunge Edgewood into a realm where the boundary between the living and the dead blurred into a tapestry of horror and revenge. The descendants, oblivious to their grim connection to the past, began experiencing unexplainable phenomena. Flickering shadows danced at the edges of their vision and bone-chilling whispers echoed through empty rooms and deserted streets. An atmosphere of fear took root as they realized a sinister presence had marked them, something that hungered for their suffering. As the sense of lurking dread intensified, the townspeople grappled to rationalize the irrational. Divisions formed as some descended into paranoid suspicion of their neighbors while others clung desperately to fraying skepticism. Some turned to the church for salvation only to find the holy water had turned to blood. Local psychic and paranormal investigators were called in, uncovering cryptic symbols and spine-tingling messages hinting at the town's dark history and the spirit they now faced. Among the descendants was Mark, whose great-grandfather had been the warden when the infamous killer was executed at the old Edgewood Penitentiary. Mark felt an otherworldly pull drawing him to the decaying Gothic ruins of the prison, now abandoned. His breath quickened and goosebumps covered his arms as he reached Stockton's cell, only to find it empty except for a noose swinging gently. A loud crash behind him made Mark jump, the beam of his flashlight catching glimpses of skeletal remains scattered across the stone floor. Descending the spiral stairs recklessly to the execution chamber, Mark froze as the swaying noose now hung directly over the electric chair. The room was filled with a deathly silence only punctured by the creaking of body bags atop gurneys lining the walls. Suddenly, the heavy chamber door slammed shut with a deafening thud, the echo reverberating through the desolate room. The metallic clank of the lock turning sent a shiver down Mark's spine, sealing him inside. Panic surged within him, an icy grip tightening around his chest. In the dim light, the body bags lining the chamber took on grotesque shapes, resembling eerie cocoons waiting to unleash their horrors. Mark's eyes widened in terror as one of the bags lurched, a pale hand emerging and reaching out towards him with a slow, deliberate motion. The fingers, unnaturally long and skeletal, clawed at the air, seeking a grip on the living. Gasping, Mark stumbled backward, his heart pounding in his ears. Desperation etched across his face, he frantically scanned the room for an escape route. The beam of his flashlight darted from one corner to another, revealing more body bags stirring, pale appendages emerging in sync with his quickening breath. The oppressive silence was shattered by the unsettling sound of fabric rustling and the low moans emanating from the shifting body bags. Mark's mind raced, torn between the paralyzing fear and the urgent need to break free from this macabre trap. In a moment of sheer terror, Mark found himself surrounded by the grotesque figures clawing their way out of the body bags. The pale hands, cold to the touch, reached for him with an otherworldly determination. It was a nightmare come to life, a grotesque dance of the undead seeking vengeance. Just as Mark felt the icy fingers graze his skin, he jolted awake with a guttural scream, drenched in a cold sweat. He was back in the safety of his own room, the remnants of the nightmare still lingering in his racing heartbeat. However, his relief was abruptly shattered as Mark's phone buzzed with an unknown number. The room seemed to grow colder as a grating voice, dripping with malevolence, cut through the silence. "The sins of your forefathers will be paid in blood." The words hung in the air, a sinister promise that sent a shiver down Mark's spine, casting a foreboding shadow over his reality. As the night unfurled its dark tapestry over Edgewood, the town lay suspended in a miasma of dread. The nightmares that gripped Mark and his fellow descendants evolved into twisted manifestations, each one more grotesque than the last. The very fabric of reality seemed to fray, exposing the raw nerves of their deepest fears. Driven by an insatiable hunger for brutal revenge, Stockton's poltergeist prowled through the town, a malevolent force that refused to rest until the bloodline of those who wronged him was severed. The air itself became charged with an ominous energy, whispering of ancient grudges and the impending clash between the living and the dead. In the midst of the chaos, the revelation from decaying prison diaries struck like a thunderbolt. The failed 1990 execution had only served to strengthen Stockton's demonic spirit. The cult, revealed to be puppet masters manipulating the town's fate, sought to harness this supernatural killer for power and influence through sacrificial rituals on the descendants. Armed with mind salt, holy water, and the shared knowledge of their intertwined bloodlines, the descendants mustered their courage to face Stockton's wrath. The air crackled with an otherworldly tension as the veil between worlds began to fade, heralding the onset of an epic battle between the living and the malevolent dead. The confrontation unfolded in a chaotic whirlwind, a maelstrom of slashing knives, grasping hands, and monstrous jaws emerging from the abyss. The very ground trembled beneath the weight of their supernatural struggle as the united descendants fought desperately to capture the vengeful poltergeist. The stroke of midnight became a pivotal moment. With a surge of combined effort, they managed to trap Stockton's spirit within a blessed mirror, a relic that shimmered with ethereal light. Gasping for breath but victorious, the united townspeople felt a mixture of exhaustion and triumph as they gazed upon their spectral captive. Yet, victory came at a cost. The mirror, now containing the imprisoned malevolence, was buried in a secret location deep within the ancient woods. The cult members, their dark plans thwarted, scattered like the remnants of a storm, seeking refuge in distant villages. Though a semblance of peace returned to Edgewood, the shadows still clung to the corners, whispering of residual evil that refused to dissipate. The united descendants, scarred but resilient, found hope in their shared victory. Yet, each night bore the weight of lingering nightmares, a haunting reminder that some horrors refuse to be forgotten, echoing through the ages like a ghostly lament.